Welcome to Weekly News Highlights, where we wrap up your week with a glimpse back into what went on over the past week. I'm Kim Dami in Seoul. In a televised New Year interview on Wednesday, President Yoon Suk Yeol once again pledged tight security commitment against growing threats coming from the north. Yoon also noted that his wife's controversial acceptance of a luxury handbag was caused by a lack of cold-heartedness. The South Korean government decided to raise the medical school admissions quota by 2,000 by 2025 to alleviate a chronic shortage of physicians. Doctors groups say collective actions will be inevitable, which the government warns will be met with consequences. South Korea will export 10 of its homegrown Cheongung-II missile defense systems to Saudi Arabia in a $3.2 billion deal. It's the second round of such exports to the Middle East after securing a deal with UAE back in 2022. President Yoon Suk Yeol took part in a New Year's interview on local TV to talk about key issues on the peninsula and abroad. Beginning with security and diplomacy, he made clear that there will be no inter-Korean summit just for show. And North Korean issues will be dealt with in the same way even after the U.S. presidential election in November. Cheongung-II starts us off.
South Korean President Yoon Suk Yeol hinted that an inter-Korean summit could be possible only if it guaranteed results. Speaking in an interview on KBS TV on Wednesday, Yoon said this would only happen using a bottom-up approach.
북이 핵을 포기하든 안 하든 남북 정상회담 할 수 있습니다. 또 이것이 탑다운 방식으로 해서는 곤란하고요. 버텀업 방식으로 양국의 실무자들 간의 어떤 교류와 이런 논의가 진행을 되면서 의제도 만들어 놓고 또 거기에 대해서 결과를 조금 준비를 해 놓고 정상회담을 해야 되는 것이지.
Yoon also said South Korea is capable of developing its own nuclear weapons in a short period of time, but stressed that doing so would be, quote, unrealistic, as it would entail serious economic sanctions. He underlined that compliance with the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty is more in line with South Korea's national interests. Describing the regime as, quote, an irrational force, the president added that the South must prepare to counter not only actions based on rational judgments, but also actions based on irrational conclusions. At the same time, Yoon said he would like to provide humanitarian aid to North Korea to help improve the lives of people there. The president also touched upon relations with South Korea's allies, the U.S. and Japan. Yoon showed confidence that the Seoul-Washington alliance will not be affected by the upcoming U.S. presidential election.
작년에 왔던 그 미 상원의원단이 어떤 의미 있는 얘기를 하시더군요. President changes, but Congress stands still이라는 얘기를 하더라고요. 저희는 한미 간의 관계는 동맹을 더 강화하고 동맹을 더 업그레이드 하느냐 아니냐의 문제이지 저는 큰 적이 없을 거라고 보고 있습니다.
And regardless of South Korea's recent rulings on forced labor compensation, Yoon stressed that Seoul-Tokyo relations have been restored. He explained that the ties were normalized last year as security cooperation between the two sides, as well as with the U.S., has become crucial against North Korea's nuclear threats. Regarding relations with China, Yoon said he doesn't think the basic principles of national policy and diplomacy are different between Seoul and Beijing, adding there is no need to be overly concerned. On Ukraine, the president said the supply chain issues emerging from the war can only be solved through international cooperation, and noted that South Korea is making various efforts to prevent any risks. Cheongung-II, Arirang News.
President Yoon also said this year he'll push so that people can feel his policies. He also saw the interview as an opportunity to share his thoughts on domestic politics and personal issues. Kim Do-yeon with more.
On the domestic side of the 90-minute interview with KBS, President Yoon Suk Yeol had the chance to dive deep into his policy vision for 2024.
제가 취임하고 2022년, 2023년 한 하반기까지는 저희 국정 기조를 제대로 정착시키는 것을 우선으로 했고 작년 하반기부터는 현장을 저희가 중시하고 또 부처 간의 그 벽화물기를 이제 시행을 하면서 금년에는 더욱더 하여튼 국민들께서 손에 잡히는 체감하는 어떤 그 정책 성과를 이룰 수 있도록 노력할 생각입니다.
While he also reiterated some specific policy plans that he's already announced during the livelihood policy discussions, such as those related to inflation, the stock market, medical reform, and childcare support, in the pre-recorded program, he took a deep dive into topics that he's never shared with the public, like his approval ratings.
좀 국민들이 야속하세요? 열심히 노력하는 걸 못
그렇지
알아주시는 것
않습니다.
같아서.
저는 이런 지지율의 추이를 보면은 만족하는 건 아니지만 국제 이런 금리가 높고 이렇게 하다 보니까 외국도 다 지금 경기가 많이 위축돼 있습니다.
네.
그럼에도 불구하고 국민들께서 이 정도 제게 실망을 좀 덜 해주시는 것만으로도
네.
저는 뭐 감사하게 생각하고.
He also spoke about the opposition Democratic Party of Korea's holding of a supermajority in the National Assembly. Some policies needing the parliament's backing are stymied for Yoon, while the opposition can pass legislation without the ruling People Power Party's votes. So far, President Yoon has vetoed 9 bills sent from the National Assembly.
국회에서 이제 의결된 법이 행정부로 넘어오는 과정에서도 여야의 좀 충분한 이런 수기가 제대로 이루어지지 않았다는 점들이 많이 아쉽습니다.
He also touched on a bill that was recently passed with bipartisan support, the ban on dog meat, which gained global attention. While it was passed with overwhelming support by the public, some were opposed to the idea, such as the dog meat traders.
개식용에 대한 금지 법률은 이제 이 정도 국민들이 이런 문화나 이런 것이 바뀌었다고 한다면은 이제는 추진할 수 있는 거 아니냐. 첨단 과학 기술이 이렇게 발전한 나라인데 해외에서 또 우리 한국에 대해서 실망할 수도 있고.
One of the most anticipated moments, however, was the first time President Yoon gave his view on the recent, quote, Dior bag scandal. A Korean-American pastor who knows First Lady Kim Gun-hee's father recorded himself with a hidden camera handing her a $2,200 Dior bag in 2022. Yoon during the interview called it a political maneuver as it was released just before the upcoming general election. However, he did emphasize that it was something that should not be repeated.
자꾸 오겠다고 하고 해서 제가 보기에는 좀 그거를 매정하게 좀 끊지 못한 것이 좀 어떤 문제라는 문제고 좀 아쉽지 않았나 생각이 되는데.
In addition, the program included the first tour of his office at the Yongsan presidential office following a move from the presidential Blue House, which included presents given to Yoon by other leaders from around the world. Kim Dami, Arirang News.
For the first time in nearly 2 decades, the medical school admissions quota here in South Korea will be increased, going up by 2,000 per year starting in 2025. That is to address the chronic shortage of physicians and doctors here in South Korea. Lee Si-woo has the details.
Beginning next year, the South Korean government is increasing the total enrollment quota for the country's medical schools by 2,000 per year. This means a total of 5,058 students will be entering med schools every year, a drastic hike from the quota of 3,058 that's been frozen since 2006. All this comes as South Korea aims to provide quality healthcare for all, especially for those in rural areas and those in need of essential care.
급속한 고령화와 보건산업 수요에 대응할 의료 인력까지 포함하면 2035년까지 약 1만 5천 명의 의사가 더 필요한 것으로 추산되고 있습니다. 국민의 건강과 생명을 지키기 위해 의사 인력 확대는 더 이상 늦출 수 없는 시대적 과제입니다.
Following President Yoon's comments on Tuesday, Health Minister Jo Kyu-hong, speaking at a ministry briefing, reiterated the reason for the hike.
2,000 more medical students a year would mean as many as 10,000 doctors entering the workforce after training between 2031 and 2035.
Cho said that while this does not exactly meet the estimated demand, the government will continue to periodically evaluate and manage supply and demand. In the process, the government will take into consideration relevant factors such as the advancement of healthcare technology, the aging population, and any future pandemic situations. Meanwhile, the health ministry has vowed that it will work to build a robust regional healthcare system by making sure that a certain percentage of the student body of medical schools outside of the capital area is filled by students from the local region. The specific size of the enrollment by school will be announced later after a review and discussion with the Education Ministry. Lee Si-hu, Arirang News.
And not everyone in the medical sector is welcoming the government's plan. Doctors are threatening to take collective action, including a nationwide strike, whereas many others, like nurses and healthcare workers, seem to be in favor of increasing the number of doctors. Song Yu-jin has more.
The medical school quota increase has been a topic of heated debate here in South Korea. The government has been pushing for an expansion to address the shortage of doctors in a country where there are only 2.6 physicians per 1,000 people, far below the OECD average of 3.7. However, this proposal has triggered strong opposition from many doctors in the country. At an emergency press conference on Tuesday, the Korean Medical Association warned of a nationwide strike if the government unilaterally proceeds with the decision to raise the quota.
This has the potential to stir up issues in our national health insurance system, which is on track to turn into a deficit this year and is anticipated to experience a decrease in accumulated funds. There are also concerns about the increase in social costs and the risk of our natural sciences education taking a hit, a critical field in enhancing Korea's competitiveness.
The association, consisting of around 140,000 doctors and medical students, has been critical of the government's plan, arguing that fundamental measures should come first. This includes enhancing the working environment for physicians through better pay or exploring methods to better allocate them so that certain areas of medicine do not experience a lack of doctors. In response, the Korean Health and Medical Workers Union, made up of nurses, caregivers, and healthcare workers, issued a press release dismissing the KMA's actions as an unjustifiable coercion. The union says increasing the number of doctors is supported by the majority of the general public, as it can prevent illegal medical practices and is crucial to enhancing the overall quality of medical services. It also challenged the KMA, calling the government's decision unilateral, emphasizing that the Ministry of Health and Welfare has engaged in dozens of meetings and consultations with the association. If a strike does happen, the Health Ministry has warned of countermeasures, such as an immediate return to work order. Those who do not comply may face a license suspension of up to a year, imprisonment for a maximum of 3 years, or a fine up to 30 million Korean won, which is around $22,500 US. Song Yu-jin, Arirang News.
It shouldn't be just parents, but the whole country who's responsible for childcare. That's how President Yoon Suk Yeol believes childcare should be. To ease parental concerns, after-school childcare services will be expanded to all elementary schools by the second semester. Kim Do-yeon reports.
The South Korean government is expanding childcare services with its public after-school program called Neulbom School. This as President Yoon Suk Yeol hosted the 9th livelihood policy discussion with citizens on Monday, announcing that the program, which is currently in its test phase at 459 elementary schools, will be expanded to all elementary schools nationwide by the second semester.
Parents 케어에서 이제는 퍼블릭 케어, 즉 국가 돌봄으로 나아가야 합니다. 이 퍼블릭 케어를 정착시키려면 무엇보다 학교 역할이 확대되어야 합니다.
The program, which offers educational, arts, and sports activities to help with childcare, especially for households with working parents, started last year. The expansion will make all first-grade students eligible, moving beyond the current limited capacity and selection process. By 2026, it aims to include all elementary students. Additionally, schools will receive dedicated officials to oversee the program and help with the administrative side. It kills two birds with one stone when it comes to tackling the low birth rate. The cost of childcare and parents having to sacrifice their careers were two top reasons behind not having children, and the program tackles these. At the discussion were parents and teachers who touted the program, especially the fact that various arts and culture classes, such as ceramics, sports, and dancing, are offered too. Some suggestions were given too.
I believe the government has to allow specialized operation methods for the program depending on whether the area is rural or urban, and in the long term this will revitalize rural areas while children will enjoy the program more.
To this, President Yoon largely agreed. Referencing the African proverb, "It takes a village to raise a child," he called on local experts in different industries to contribute to the program at schools around them.
이런 농촌형, 도시형 같은 지역 특색에 맞는 그런 교육 프로그램들을 다양하게 우리가 제공하고, 저도 그 재능 기부할 수 있는 게 있는지 한번 찾아보고 저도 한번 봉사활동을 하겠습니다. 감사합니다, 여러분. 고맙습니다.
President Yoon added that childcare itself is a part of education, especially for young children. And he wrapped up by saying that it's the government's duty to guarantee freedom for its citizens to be able to choose what they learn. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
It's the Lunar New Year holiday, Seollal here in South Korea, which always keeps grocery shoppers busy preparing the holiday food, but also makes them contemplate at the checkout with such high inflation in the country. For more, we're joined by our economic correspondent, Shin-Young. Welcome back, Ha-young.
Great to be here, Dami.
So, Ha-young, how is the situation regarding the cost for preparing for the charity table for Seollal this year?
Well, Dami, I'd first like to point out that there are conflicting survey results on the cost of preparing a charity table. While some consumer groups claim that the expenses have increased significantly from the previous year, the South Korean government says it is at a similar level to 2023. The Korean National Council of Consumer Organizations reported that the cost of groceries for a charity table for a family of 4 jumped 8.6% from the year before. On the other hand, citing the Korea Agro-Fisheries and Food Trade Corporation, the Agriculture Ministry on Wednesday announced that it only rose by 0.7% on year to 309,641 Korean won, or around $230. It also emphasized a 3% decrease in the price of high-demand Chuseok items such as cabbage and beef. Take a listen.
The difference between the government's data and other surveys is because certain factors such as discounts from the government and large supermarkets are included in our data, but not in others.
Then beyond the numbers, Ha-young, what's the public's view on the prices in general?
Well, despite the conflicting data, which I just mentioned, the common sentiment among consumers I spoke with is that the cost of fruit is skyrocketing. Let's first take a listen to what the consumers had to say.
The soaring prices of fruits, vegetables, and manufactured goods made me hesitant to buy, but I ended up purchasing them to celebrate Seollal with my family.
The prices of fruits and vegetables have gone up a lot. I even hesitated to buy zucchini as the price doubled.
We have to talk about fruits. How much have fruit prices gone up then? I mean, what's the reason behind such the hike?
Well, it'll be easy to understand if we compare the figure to the last month's overall consumer prices. According to Statistics Korea, consumer prices last month rose by 2.8% from the year before, dropping to the 2% range for the first time in 6 months. However, fruit prices surged by over 28%, 10 times higher than the overall average increase. Apple prices in particular jumped more than 50%. And when setting up a charity table, people usually look for fruits of high quality. But with soaring prices, consumers want more affordable options, such as fruit and vegetables that are relatively ugly or have scratches. One expert attributes higher fruit prices to abnormal weather conditions. Take a listen.
Apple prices have skyrocketed since last year's Chuseok. Abnormal weather conditions, including cold waves, have resulted in poor apple harvests. Since the country doesn't import apples, prices are rising due to limited supply.
Personally, I've become one of those consumers who don't mind buying fruits that are less pretty. Now, how is the government coping with such high prices? I mean, what measures are there?
Well, the government says its aim is to lower prices by allocating an all-time high of 84 billion won, which is around $63 million, to provide discount coupons for the purchase of agricultural, livestock, and fishery products. It has also increased the supply of reserve stocks of commodities that are in high demand. And one expert says consumer can get discount of up to 60%. Take a listen.
Consumers may not notice the significant impact of the government's release of reserved stocks of Seollal items due to last year's poor harvest. However, with the government offering up to a 30% discount and retailers adding an additional 30%, consumers can enjoy discounts of up to 60% when purchasing agricultural and livestock products.
I also heard the government cut tariffs on certain fruits to tame the skyrocketing prices for fruits as well.
You're right, Tammy. Along with the measures I've just mentioned, tariffs have been slashed on 6 imported fruit types, including pineapples, bananas, and mangoes. However, the issue is that apples and pears, which have seen the highest price increase, aren't included because the country doesn't import these fruits. In other words, the government said it would address the soaring fruit prices by substituting traditionally used fruit with others, since it cannot dramatically increase domestic production of apples and pears.
All right, Hayoung, thank you for that report today. Happy Seollal.
Happy Seollal.
South Korea will ship 10 of its domestically developed Cheongung-II medium-range surface-to-air missile batteries to Saudi Arabia. The hit-to-kill missile system is capable of intercepting incoming missiles at an altitude of about 40 kilometers. Now, the $3.2 billion contract is the second sale of the system to a Middle Eastern country. Yoon Hee has more.
South Korea has announced a deal to export to Saudi Arabia 10 M-SAM-2 mid-range surface-to-air missile batteries. According to Seoul's Defense Ministry on Tuesday, the deal, worth some 4.2 trillion Korean won or $3.2 billion was sealed last November between South Korean defense firm Alleviate and the Saudi Arabian Defense Ministry. The M-SAM-2, known locally as Cheongung-II missiles, are a core weapon system of Korea air and missile defense. The so-called Korean Patriot uses hit-to-kill missiles capable of intercepting incoming missiles at an altitude of 30 to 40 kilometers. The advanced technology system includes simultaneous engagement of multiple targets, high mobility with canard and side jet thrusters, and direct targeting with a power-enhancing warhead. This is LIG Next One's second export deal, as it previously signed the deal with the United Arab Emirates in 2022. Tuesday's announcement comes as South Korea and Saudi Arabia have agreed to further strengthen their defense cooperation. As part of this week's visit to the Middle East, South Korea's Defense Minister Shin Won-sik met with Saudi Arabia's Defense Minister on Sunday in Riyadh. The two sides signed a memorandum of understanding to establish a joint committee to cooperate in research and weapons development in the mid to long term. On Tuesday, Shin visited Qatar and signed an MOU on furthering the two countries' defense and arms cooperation in light of the 50th anniversary of their diplomatic relations this year. Yoon Hee, Arirang News.
An increasing number of North Koreans hold a negative view of their leader, Kim Jong-un, according to South Korea's Unification Ministry. And food shortages in the north may be worse than already known. Kim Jong-sil has his report.
An extensive record of the voices of people who have left North Korea creates a stark image. Unlike what people have been led to believe, the reality of the lives of North Koreans under the regime may have been much harsher than imagined. On Tuesday, the government here released a comprehensive report on the North's economy and its society at large. The report is based on a trove of information that had been kept confidential until now. This is a report that holds the voices of 6,351 North Korean defectors. The Ministry of Unification says this will give valuable insight into understanding the reality of the regime that's closed and isolated from the world. Research experts asked each defector more than 1,100 questions on a one-on-one basis. According to the report, 72.2% said they had not received any food rations from the state once Kim Jong-un became the leader of the North. More than 50% said they received neither food rations nor wages in exchange for work. The ministry said this indicates the regime has been exploiting people by stressing passion and loyalty without paying wages. However, the defectors said most North Korean residents were now having 3 meals a day instead of 2.
Some assessed that the lives of North Koreans have improved, with many buildings being built in Pyongyang ever since Kim Jong-un came to power. But based on our research, this is a mere optical illusion, and the lives of the residents have actually become harsher.
The report said that bribery has doubled since Kim took power, with most residents believing that the gap between the rich and poor in the north has widened. 56.3% of those questioned said they felt negatively about the change of leadership in the north. The ministry gave extensive data in the form of numbers, which it hopes will allow the public and the international community to get a better understanding of the regime's reality. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
Britain's King Charles III has been diagnosed with cancer. Buckingham Palace is yet to clarify what type of cancer what the king was diagnosed with, while royal officials noted it was not prostate cancer. With Charles beginning treatment, he will step back from his public-facing duties as recommended by doctors, but he will continue with his official state duties. A day after the news, King Charles was seen in public for the first time on Tuesday. Charles was seen waving and smiling to passers-by in a car with Queen Camilla while on a short drive from his home, Clarence House in central London, to Buckingham Palace on Tuesday afternoon. It is believed that Charles and Camilla left on board the royal household helicopter later that day, departing for the Sandringham state. The heir to the South Korean conglomerate Samsung Electronics, Lee Jae-young, was acquitted of stock manipulation and accounting fraud charges in connection with a controversial merger nearly a decade ago. Now, Monday's court ruling supports Lee's long argument that the merger was a normal business activity. The acquittal is also a huge relief for Lee, who's faced legal issues for years. Our Shin Ha-young covered this story.
The Seoul Central District Court acquitted Samsung Electronics executive chairman Lee Jae-young on Monday at his trial for alleged accounting fraud and violation of the law on capital markets several times. The court held its hearing on Lee at 2 p.m., 3 years and 5 months after the Samsung chief was indicted in connection with the 2015 fraud case. The main issue in the trial was whether the merger process between two Samsung affiliates in 2015 was conducted properly. In 2020, Lee was indicted on charges of manipulating stock prices in the 2015 merger of two Samsung affiliates, Samsung C&T and Cheoll Industries, in which 3 Samsung C&T shares were offered for 1 Cheoll share. There have been accusations that Samsung Group management may have intentionally lowered the value of Samsung C&T to help Lee gain control of the company, as he was the largest shareholder of Cheoll Industries. Last November, prosecutors demanded a 5-year prison sentence for Lee. They also requested a fine of 500 million Korean won, or around $375,000. Prosecutors say the manipulation caused losses for other investors and held Lee responsible for these. He also stands accused of involvement in suspected accounting fraud at Samsung Biologics, a subsidiary of Cheoll Industries. The court also delivered not guilty verdicts for 13 current and former employees of Samsung who were indicted along with Lee. It stated that there was no proof of the charges, adding that the prosecution failed to sufficiently prove that the merger was unlawfully conducted to bolster the chairman's control over the company. The Associated Press reported that the latest ruling by the court could alleviate the legal troubles surrounding the Samsung heir. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
That is all we have for this week. We thank you for watching Weekly News Highlights. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.